Everybody, we're going to call the school board meeting to order. Thank you for coming. It's Tuesday, August 13th, 6:30 p.m. We're going to start off with item 1, adoption of the agenda. Motion and a second. Do we have any board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 2 is the flag salute. Trustee Crossman, if you'll lead us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3 is the superintendent report. This is for information only. Superintendent, good feeling. Okay.
Thank you, President Cassiopo. Good evening, trustees. If you didn't know, school's about to start. So that's pretty exciting. I know there was a rumor that it might not be until after Christmas. That's not true. So, no, very excited to get things going next Monday. Life has come back to the schools. A lot of staff have been in and out back. We had our first principals meeting last week. We had our welcome back, our kickoff events for new teachers and classified staff today. Just lots of smiling faces and excitement. So very happy to see that happening again. Tonight we have a couple folks to introduce, and we're actually, I'm going to go a little bit out of order for this, but I'd like to bring up Candy Robles, if you wouldn't mind coming to the table. We had quite a bit of success, and Mr. Billings, sorry, I thought you were still over at Carson High. Quite a bit of success at the recent Nevada Association of Career and Technical Education Summer Conference. And so I will let Candy and Josh explain a little bit more about what happened.
Well, good evening, President Joe Cassiopo and trustees. It's nice to be here. As you know, I'm Josh Billings. I've been working in this capacity with CTE for 3 years, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll just go ahead and get started as Candy's getting us going. We're here to present awards that we won for our programs, for our quality programs and standard review. Go ahead, Candy, if you'd like.
Candy Robles. So in Nevada and in other states, CTE programs are rated by a quality program standard. It's not unique to Nevada. Many states do it. Teachers are asked to meet the requirements of 9 different standards with a total of 52 performance indicators that are related directly to career and technical education, beyond those that they meet for their NEPF. So this has been a project that started in January of 2022 and culminated with our awards. So these quality program standards are really designed to support and not be punitive. It supports the design of CTE programs. It supports high quality implementation and assessment, and it's designed to provide feedback to districts about how they can improve their CTE programs. Because as stewards of public state funds and federal funds, we have a responsibility to meet standards.
I would just like to maybe highlight one of the things that Candy rushed upon, and that is this is above NEPF. And so when you're listening to what we went through for the QPR, QPS, this went above and beyond the daily requirements of our teachers. They had to upload, and you'll hear what they had to do in order to meet the expectations of the quality program review of the standards. And so as administrators, as leaders, our teachers as leaders, we really had to structure our time to support this work, do it with fidelity, and that's really what our teachers did. It was really going above the normal day-to-day expectations.
the 9 standards and the 38 pieces of evidence they were asked to provide is a little bit of a treasure hunt. And so we used PLC time, collaboration time to really work together to not only look at individual pieces of evidence, but to collect evidence that we had school-wide so that we could look at what we had in common and then really delve into what were we missing. We submitted our first documents in June of 2023. We received feedback a couple of months later and said, these are the things that we think we're missing. Would you please review your documentation? We resubmitted in many programs. Then we had administrative interviews. Mr. Billings and I were interviewed by Nevada Department of Ed, education programs professionals in the CTE department. And then our teachers also had interviews through Zoom meetings with those education program professionals. And in December of last year, we got our summary results. So we really spent 18 months really digging deep and learning about what we are doing well and what our challenges are. And then our awards were, awards are given only in the July event, and so this is what the results are.
So, and I'll just dive into the interview portion just briefly. One of the things that we did, as you can hear, we focused a lot of our PLC time and also our efforts to highlight what we were doing well and provide that evidence to the state. But one of the things we don't do is say to our teachers, well, this is what you should say, this is how you say it. We say, we know how professional our teachers are, and there was no coaching. They really authentically shared their answers with the state in this capacity.
So things are scored, given scores in 4 different categories. One is program of distinction. This is 70% or higher of the criteria. There's programs of excellence, 60 to 69.99%. Programs, we had 2 programs that were reviewed but not scored, did not receive a rating, they received scores. And then we had 0 programs in need of improvement. So we're going to talk about and present the plaques for all of the programs of distinction. Our teacher couldn't be here tonight for program of excellence. So this is big. This is big in our CTE life. Really big. And we don't have to do it again for 5 years, which is really good news to some of us who won't be here in 5 years. But you'll be great. He's got this. So, are you ready?
Well, I was going to say, the state has a choice to renew our quality program review they have a choice of going 3 years to 5 years. And so that, just the fact that they chose 5 years shows the excellence that we're providing that we're doing for students.
Do you want to hand out the plaques or do you want to read? Okay. He's so excited. So we had 12 programs of distinction. Agricultural welding, power, and structure technology, Charlie Mann. Mr. Mann. Animal systems and plant systems, Lauren Gates. She's on here. Military science, Senior Chief Jerry Skirvin. Emergency medical technology, Frank Sakalarius. Sports medicine, Kelly Gustafson. Culinary arts, Casey Kemet. Cybersecurity, Josh Barham. Web design and development, Danielle Miller. Marketing, Cody Stalker Downing. And the engineering dynamic duo, architectural and civil engineering and mechanical engineering, Evelyn Grime and Kirsten Kolstad. Okay.
You'll notice that we have one more award up there. Yeah, there's one more.
Hold on. Graphic design received a program of excellence. And that was a certificate. And then our two programs that were scored but did not receive awards were teaching and training. So teaching and training was in its second year last year. There was no assessment data. Students had not taken their workplace readiness assessment or end of program assessment. So Emily Riggin collected the data. Adam Watley supplemented the data and did the interview, and Nicole Fagundes will take over in teaching and training. And they've received a score of 85% as a collaborative group. Early childhood education is in its third year this year. So Kendra Tuttle's students did not take any assessment last year as well. She received a 78.95%. And so both of them would have been programs of distinction had their students taken awards. So I just want to acknowledge them as well because they worked as teachers new to CTE. It was very confusing. I mean, it's confusing to us when we've done it for 10 years, but it was very confusing to people who work in different disciplines and have to look at data that's maybe not their own data. So just appreciation to them for that.
And lastly, I'm excited to share that Candy has been named the CTE Administrator of the Year for the state of Nevada. This is a prestigious award, recognizes her outstanding contributions and leadership in career or in CTE. It goes without saying she is dedicated to advancing educational opportunities and supporting student success, and that has truly set her apart. So congratulations to Candy for this honor.
So for all the CTE staff, thank you so much for coming to this. I got a very excited email soon after the conference from one of the teachers, all caps. Did you hear what happened at the Nevada CTE conference? And so as I learned a bit more, I thought it'd be great to bring everyone in. So trustees, I don't know if you have any thoughts or questions.
I just want to congratulate everybody. It's a lot of work that goes into all these programs, and I appreciate everybody's involvement. It's just one more example of the great people we have in our district, quite frankly. And I'm not sure that Candy read the fine print, but I believe it said by accepting this award, it's a 5-year commitment to remain in the. Maybe I read it wrong. But congratulations, everybody. I don't know if anybody else had anything to say.
Okay, I will continue on. Also this evening, we have a couple introductions of new principals in the district, one who has been very familiar and one who is not so much. So Principal Carrie Pryor at Sealiger Elementary, would you mind coming on up and maybe giving us a little hello introduction to the board?
Mr. Fueling, are you really gonna let her come up to the podium without a walk-up song?
I know.
I mean, come on, we gotta practice what we preach.
That is my mistake. We will rectify that next time.
Carrie Pryor, principal of Sealiger Elementary. For the record, I didn't hear the directions.
Oh, if you could introduce yourself to the board.
I'm Carrie Pryor. I have had the pleasure of being in the Carson City School District. This is my 15th year. It's my 30th year. I'm starting in education, but my 15th year in Carson City. And it has just been an honor to be part of Carson City School District. I was saying to Mr. Conley that getting ready for tomorrow, there's such a history because I worked as a regional trainer, and Mr. Conley, when he was the principal of Seeliger, brought me to Seeliger to do a balanced math training years ago when I had started professional learning. And Lee said to me, I think that was 20 years ago. And I said, well, thank you for pointing out how old I am. But why I tell that story is because I remember standing in that library, and if you've ever been to the Seeliger Library, it's very special. It's the heart of Seeliger. It's the center of our building, and if ever you get lost, you just go to the library. And so I remember doing that training and thinking what a wonderful staff Seeliger was. They were very welcoming, and to this day, that staff has remained the same. All the former principals, I asked Miss Renee and Miss Ariel at HR to put together a list of the history, and I have the honor of being the 7th principal to serve at Seeliger in all the years. So people stay there for a reason. We have several staff members who were part of that balanced math training 20 years ago, and they're still there. And so I'm just super excited to bring the staff back tomorrow. You'll hear me say it over and over and over again. And I know Mr. Feeling stopped in on Monday, and what makes Seeliger special is the people that work there and the students that we serve and the families that we serve. So you'll hear me say over and over again, one of my favorite quotes in education is by a man named Todd Whitaker. And he says, what makes great schools great is great teachers. And he always says over and over again, in education, it's about people, not programs. And so my staff is coming back to T-shirts that actually say on the back of them, it's all about pirates, not programs. And so we're really just going to focus on Tier 1 instruction, making sure our students are served through that Tier 1 instruction, and really focusing on MTSS. But the main focus is that it's about our pirates and not about programs. Do you have any questions?
I just have a comment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that you'll do a super job because in every position you've held here, you've always done a super job.
Thank you.
And I'm looking, as I said this morning, looking forward to coming and visiting you at your school in a couple weeks after things calm down. But just congratulations again. Yeah, it's well deserved.
Thank you. Yes, everyone's welcome. Our staff, our students love visitors to come. Happy to walk around, happy to take you into classrooms and seeing the great instruction that's happening.
Yeah, Carrie, just ditto to what Rich said. It's,
Thank you.
You know, you've, ever since I've known you, you've just been wonderful, and you've really helped raise the caliber of, you know, the programs we have. And again, like you said, it's because of the people.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see that, you know, we're going to continue with that theme. Yeah, Seeliger is kind of near and dear to me. Two of my 3 kids went there, even as old as Mr. Conley is. They were even there before him. Long time ago. But it's a great school. It's, you know, it was our neighborhood school, and we have a lot of special people in special schools, and, you know, we're looking forward to your 10 years principal, and I know you'll
Thank
do a
you.
great job.
Thank
So
you.
congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, next time we'll be prepared with a walk-up song.
What's the song, Mrs. Pryor?
Well, I did find out in going back through the history of Seeliger, just because I love the history of any place that you go in, because I think the walls speak, and just there's something very special about Seeliger. If you haven't been there in a while, you just need to come back. It's just really a special place. There's actually a Seeliger song, and one of my parents who is now the PTO president, she had her daughter who we have bring it, and so now Mr. Van Orman's going to teach it. So it can be my walk-up song next time. But it's this, yeah, there's a Seeliger song, and she said that's how all the kids learned to spell Seeliger, because it's spelled at the end of the song. So
Is that streaming on YouTube Music or Spotify? Or?
not quite yet. I've asked Mr. Van Orman to teach it to the choir. So as soon as it is taught to the choir, I will make sure you get a copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
And next this evening, we have a new face to the Carson City School District, our new principal at Empire Elementary, Reagan Virgil.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Reagan Virgil, new principal at Empire Elementary School. I didn't have a whole thing like here. Okay, I'll just do my best. I was with Washoe County School District for 26 years and just kind of looking for a change. And I started looking at some other districts. And when I looked at Carson, I was just incredibly impressed with the way you value your educators here. The retention rates, the equity of the schools was what really spoke to me because we have in my opinion, a problem with that up there. So I was excited to have the opportunity to interview there and then just completely honored to have gotten the position. And having met the staff, we only had one new hire this year, which is just amazing and speaks to how you treat the educators here. But the staff is like a family over there, and I feel like we can do some really great work. I was principal at Palmer Elementary and Trainer Middle School for 10 years before this, and got to work with solution tree coaches over the years, and so feel really confident in my abilities with PLCs, which fit great with the proficiency scales and the work that Carson City School District's doing right now. So I really think I can help elevate the scores over there and do some good things for the kids socially and in all sorts of ways. So I'm just honored and excited to be here and ready to answer any questions. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Reagan, thank you. Welcome to the Carson City School District.
Thank you
We're
so much.
excited to have you. And Empire's another one. I mean, all our schools are neighborhood schools, but it really truly is a neighborhood school. You know, we get a lot of people that walk to school and they're part of that community, and it's, you know, just, I think it's a special place that, you know, with the right people there, which we have, it just flourishes. So we're glad to see you're going to be a part of it and, you know, and help our kids and our teachers and staff flourish along with them. So
Thank you. I
welcome
appreciate that.
aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that is all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 4, board reports, board member comments. This again is for information only, and we'll start with update from the Nevada Association of School Boards.
I have no report tonight.
All righty. Let's see. I don't think we have any association reports. So next on the list is announcements. So we'll start with Trustee Crossman.
I do have an announcement from Dr. Ward over at Fremont Elementary School. And she said they are having their back to school parent meeting meet and greet this Friday. And they're going to have 3 sessions, one at 4:30, one at 5:15, and one at 6 p.m. on Friday. So great time to meet and greet all the staff and parents there. Also, she wanted to have us mark our calendars for September 6th, as that will be their fall festival starting at 4 p.m. And she also wants to thank everyone who worked so diligently to make sure that the new employees to the district felt welcomed and appreciated. All the hard work of the mentors and coaches to set everyone up for success is very greatly appreciated. So that's the report from Fremont Elementary School. And then also, I would just like to take a minute to thank Trustee Walt for her efforts with the city and Empire Elementary School. And I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting with Superintendent Fueling when they approved the lot line adjustment to transfer a few acres of that park to Empire Elementary so that the students can have an area to play that can be enclosed and provide greater safety for them. So I appreciated her work in helping to get that going. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Rich?
Before I start my report, I'd just like to say that I was able to attend the new hire breakfast this morning, and we had several speakers. Mr. Fueling is one of them. And I just want to let you know, I thought you did an excellent speech. You made a lot of funny innuendos, and you did a really good job. So I just wanted to tell you that you represented the division very well, or the district, I should say. But anyway, thank you. I'm going back to law enforcement. Sorry.
Molly?
No, I have.
Sorry, Rich. I'm
No,
sorry.
no problem. From Boardwalk, Principal Raqueta would like to thank all the families who attended their parent meetings last night and again tonight. They have one more on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, and kindergarten next Wednesday, August 21st. All the meetings start at 6 p.m. and they're held in the multi-purpose room. And their staff there is excited to see all the students when they return to school. And she asked that you save the date for their grade level back to school nights in September. These will be potlucks, so you can get to know all of the children's teachers as well as the families of other students in your child's grade. They will also be giving out important information about the school year and will have an opportunity to see your child's classrooms. And each night will begin at 5:30 in the multipurpose room. And there'll be information coming out on Parent Square about it. And she hopes to see everyone there. And then from Fritz Elementary, Principal Brown wanted to share that Fritz will have an ice cream social on Thursday, August 15th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. as a way to welcome their families back to school this year. They will also have a book fair going on the same evening. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Molly?
Yes, thank you. So I just had to piggyback on this morning. If ever you need a sign job, I really do think a comedian. I do. I was quite impressed, actually, quite impressed. Yes, but you do have I think you have a side gig going there. Yeah. And I don't know if it was off the cuff or not, but it was actually quite entertaining. So very good job, and it was extremely welcoming. So nice job, and thank you, Laurel. Yes, I wasn't able to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting last week, but thank you for doing so and answering the questions at hand. They were the same questions that were brought up at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, and I think that they were addressed at that point as well. And so I am excited to maybe hear when the fence is going up. I was there last night. I didn't see it up just yet. But anybody who knows me, you know I'm not the most patient person in the world, right? Okay, so that's just there, but I did. I went by last night, and any updates?
Yeah, if I could. So the city and our capital projects and operations departments are in contact to finalize the important thing is to strategically separate where the irrigation system is so that it can transfer over. So they're going to be getting together to finalize that so they can get a final. They have a quote on fencing, but they just need to kind of finalize exactly so we can tie that all out. The survey work also has to be nailed down to make sure we don't put it in exactly the wrong place. So it won't be ready by Monday, but we're moving on it
Okay.
fast as we can.
And then I did meet with the Carson City School Foundation, and we're working on some, ideas on what we could possibly do with that to, make it a place of recess for the 4th and 5th graders as well. The blacktop needs some TLC, if not a lot of it. And so there's some things that, with the foundation, with the Empire Elementary School PTO, that we might be able to look at raising some funds to really, make it school rather than park, if you can, kind of think of it that way. So I was, thank you for Carson City School Foundation for having me at their meeting and discussing that as well. And then Empire Elementary Schools back their meet and greet, and of course my computer turns off right when I'm going to do that. So yes, Empire Elementary School's meet and greet is Friday, August 16th, 3:30 to 5. And then for Carson High School, fall sports have started. I think this is one of my favorite time of the year. I don't know what I'm going to do if my kids don't when they stop participating in fall sports. But yeah, so fall sports have started, and it is just lively at Carson High School already. And so it's great to see everybody having a great time.
Is your youngest still in high school? Sorry, this is,
Actually, yes. So my youngest is a senior in high school.
okay.
Yeah, so he just he just made the varsity boys soccer team. So he'll be, yeah, so he's playing, and then my husband is volunteer coaching.
Great. Oh, thank you. Matt?
Miss Robinson is at Carson Middle School, and she wants to report that they're very excited to see all the students on Monday for the first day of school. All Carson Middle School students and families are invited to the sneak peek this Thursday, August 15th from 4:30 to 6. Students can pick up their schedules and walk around the building to locate their classes. And she and the staff are looking forward for a great year. And Ms. Crookshanks over at Mark Twain says that Mark Twain's excited for a new school year. They're excited to welcome back the smiling faces, and they're fully staffed and ready to go. Looking forward to continuing their work with MTSS and making school a great place to be. They're going to be kicking off the year with a back-to-school night on Friday starting at 4:30, and parents will receive a message from her, the principal, prior to getting their teacher assignments. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mike?
You know, I don't have much of a report. I spent a little bit of time talking with Carrie and her new assistant principal at breakfast this morning, so I know Seeliger is in good hands, and she kind of highlighted her excitement. I think I'll just, to Mr. Conley, I was actually a teacher when she came and did that math lesson, and when she was talking about the school song, those of you up here might not know, but Mr. Conley was a really big fan of More Cowbell. And I don't know how many times we saw him dance and sing and hit the cowbell, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to say her song is More Cowbell. So that's what I was expecting when she's veered into different directions. So, but I think they're going to have a great year. So it's exciting time of year.
Thanks, Mike. No report for Pioneer, other than to say, you know, it's a new year, and the people I have spoken to at Pioneer and other schools they're all excited. It's, you know, it's always exciting to start a new school year and see the kids, and you know, everybody has a fresh start, a new year, and it's just a great time. And do what everybody does. You know, it's a little different this year with Pioneer and Carson High, but I think, you know, it's going to be real seamless, and I think it's going to work out really well. And you know, I hope everybody's excited and embraces the adjustment we have there. But I just want to welcome everybody back, staff and families and students and everybody. So, and that's all I have for my report. And I did jump ahead. I apologize, but the next item is item 5, and that's where we have association reports. And I don't see anybody in attendance, so I'm going to assume we have no association reports. So we'll move on to public comment if we have any. Do we have anybody here in person that wishes to make public comment? Seeing none. Renee, did we get any email public comments? Okay. I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to move on to item 7, which is discussion and proposed changes to CCSD policy 205, instructional supplies. This is the first reading for discussion only, and we have Tasha Fuson.
Thank you, President Cassiopo. This evening, I'm going to review with you policy and regulation 205 on instructional supplies. We'll start with the policy. Really, the intent was to change regulation. So when we change regulation, we like to at least bring the board policy in front of the board to see if there's changes that you would like to see occur. In reviewing it, there was really not, it was consistent with current practices, current beliefs, current objectives of the district, and therefore I'm hoping still of the board. We did modernize it with adding the Carson City School District Board of Trustees instead of just board. So that's what you're seeing with those slight changes. It was just bringing it up to the current format that we're using. So no suggested changes, but if you have things that you would like us to add or consider, please let me know.
Okay, just a couple things in the first sentence. It is a little long. I had to read it a couple times to make sure, and it works, but I don't know if we want to maybe like clean it up a little bit. And you know I love Oxford commas because I think they're easier to read. So I don't know if you want to put those in. I wouldn't mind. The other question I have is that we talked about supplies, materials, and equipment for the teaching staff members. But then for students, it was supplies and materials. Is there a reason that we left equipment out?
Not to my knowledge. Happy to make that parallel construction if you would like for those two areas.
On that note, because I was thinking the same thing, because equipment, is there laptops, a supply, or equipment?
So typically, I would consider that a supply. Superintendent Fueling is saying supply, so I'm going to go with him since he's my boss. I think that's a safe bet. Yes, supply.
Okay, because then that's where I was looking at if it needed to be added or not added, if they're, what are they called, the books, the computers? Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
Would be a supplier equipment.
Yeah, I think the equipment could maybe come into place for some of our special education students. There's some more significant equipment sometimes for them. So that would still work, I think, if you did make that parallel.
And I just think if you made it parallel, you could just combine the two, students and teachers and students, instead of having that whole article at the end. You could just make it a sentence, and that would kind of,
Clean it up a little bit.
yeah.
Okay. Absolutely.
Rich, go ahead.
The only question I have is when you talk about supplies and equipment that we're going to provide to the students. I remember having to buy calculators and everything for math classes and everything like that. Are the students still going to be responsible for those type of things?
So as a district, we supply all required equipment or supplies in that manner to students. So all of, for instance, at the high school, we do have 4 students who cannot provide that for themselves, calculators that can be checked out for the year. So we never want a student to go without. Many students choose to purchase them. Those calculators are very expensive, so
No,
I know exactly what you mean, but we do have them for our families that are in need of support there. We do provide them if they need them.
Okay, so the students would still purchase those, but you do have some if they can't
Correct. If
afford
they
it.
wanted to have them, if they wanted to have it themselves, many of them, this is an interesting question, right? Because there's multiple different types of calculators. We do suggest one specific one because our teachers actually have to teach our kids how to use those calculators. In many cases, our Chromebooks actually are sufficient for the math that the students need to do. But since many of our students that are taking that very high level of math actually end up taking those calculators into college as well, they often choose to buy them. But again, what our teachers do with the students is they say, you can either get this calculator, they actually teach them how to use all forms of those calculators, and if you don't, we will check one out to you for the duration of the year so that you're not having to provide that yourself. So we always make sure we have a supply of those, and the teachers have extra ones in the classroom in case students forget them.
Okay, thank you.
Tesh, I just wondered, it's not necessary, but paragraph 2, where students prepare items. It just, when I read it like twice. I just wondered if that, they are permitted to keep bracketed in commas. I don't think we need the first comma. Maybe we could just say, where students prepare items that they are permitted to keep,
Okay.
comma. It just seems like it just read easier for me.
And of course, I mean, I'm sure everyone's following, but in case there's folks that are listening to our board meeting, that really pertains mostly to several of our CTE courses, for instance, like in culinary arts, they do charge lab fees because although we purchase the bare essentials for that, they charge lab fees so that they can purchase more food, and then the students will take home the food that they make if they're doing special projects. Or for instance, in art, right, there'll be a lab fee. So there's certain things like that. So we of course allow the students to bring home anything that they've paid for. And when it comes to lab fees, those lab fees are required to be spent on the same year as the students pay them on the students for the students that pay them. So we make sure that, again, anytime a student has a need, if a student communicates that they have a financial need, then we waive those as well. And we have a special account that we actually get a lot of donation funds for that goes into for students who are in need of financial assistance. So actually the teachers get the funds to use in the classroom for those projects. We just pull the funds from a different place.
Laurel?
Just another question, and maybe it's off topic, but it kind of relates. When the legislature gave and had us set up accounts for teacher supply, what's happening with that? Did they not give us the money? Did they give us the money? Did they roll it into something different? Are we still, how does, and if this is too far off, we can talk about it later.
So they had created during COVID through Donors Choose, where the state had funded, I forget the total dollar amount, it was a very large dollar amount, but I believe every teacher could access, I think it was up to $800. And I think that was happening again this last year. I'm not sure of the dollar amount. Does that sound familiar, Mrs. Fuson? 500, okay. But I don't believe, I haven't heard any word that it's going to continue on in this new school year.
And I'm not sure, because I was thinking about this, if it was this year or last year, they all blend together, but it used to be teachers could submit receipts and get reimbursed, and I believe it was this last year, they gave them all a certain amount of money, and they were required to keep receipts of that. So I think it was something through the state, and so it was like $150 each teacher, and they had to maintain their receipts that they used it for educational supplies. But all the years kind of blend together, so it's been a change a little bit.
That was former years, and then I think the state for the last 2 years went with the donor's choice piece. We can absolutely do a presentation if you're interested. Many of our teachers did benefit from that program. Those materials and supplies that are purchased through that actually then belong to the school, not to the teacher. And so we make sure that we communicate that well to the teachers, like they need to be used specifically for the classroom, and that if this. We do make some adjustments if the teacher, for instance, moves from one school within district to another school, but technically we have board policy that governs how that's done, or district processes that govern how that's done, and we could definitely bring that back and let you know how many teachers benefited from that and what that looked like in terms of contributing to instructional supplies in our classrooms, if that's something you would like to hear from us.
Okay, yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I guess I would just suggest, if we're going to hear about that, if there's an updated policy that we're currently doing this school year. So like if it's about what we did years past, I don't know that we necessarily need to have a presentation about it, but if it's like this year, this is what's happening for teachers, I think that'd be more interesting, or of more interest.
And then my other thought along with that is, if it's something that has gone away, but it's something we want to maybe bring forward with session, that, hey, teachers still have supply needs, instructional supply needs.
Well, and my bet is we potentially would see it go away, because I do believe we used ESSER funds as a state to fund that. I'm looking at you, Superintendent Fueling, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Those funds expire in September, so I'm assuming that will come to an end unless we find a different funding source.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 8, discussion and proposed changes to CCSD Regulation 205, textbook adoption process, for discussion only. Again, Tasha Fuson.
Thank you, sir. In this particular regulation, you can see that instead of trying to do, as often I do when there's going to be substantial changes in the way things are worded, we just struck through the existing regulation and added new verbiage. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with the regulation as written. It's just that it wasn't as explicit as NRS is currently. And since we as a district are embarking on another wave of textbook adoptions and instructional materials adoptions, believe it or not, those of you who were on the board 7 years ago remember the big wave that we did. And we just did as you all know, K-5 math materials adoption, but HMH is actually due 2 years from now. Our science was due last year, but we extended it for 3 years for elementary, because I'm trying to get back in alignment with NDE's cycle of instructional materials adoption. So I didn't want to adopt a new material for our teachers that could be outdated within a 3-year period of time. So there's a reason for that. So I thought it would be a good time for us to actually be able to go through and update our district's regulation with and how we select instructional materials. You can see if you look, and actually it's at the bottom, so it's on page 3 because page 1, 2, and the top of page 3 are all struck through. But if you look at the middle of page 3, the objectives have pretty much stayed the same. We haven't really changed those. We did strike number 5 on page 1 that talked about the Carson City School District will comply with the mandates of Senate Bill 466 by including et cetera, et cetera. We took that out. This policy had not been updated since 2010, I believe is when the last date was. Regulation was, hold on, let me look on that. So this one was 2009. The policy was 2010. So this had not been updated since 2009. So that was a very old Senate bill and didn't feel like it needed to exist there anymore. So that's why that was removed. But otherwise, the objectives, in essence, remained very similar, if not exactly the same in most of them. The textbook selection committee, that changed a little bit. If you'll notice on page 3, it specifies that we need to have a teacher or teachers who are licensed to teach that subject area, an administrator, or a specialist in curriculum. C is a parent, and D is any other member or members the superintendent deems necessary. On the original one, we had other pieces like students, librarian, building representative, counselors, et cetera. And although we can invite those folks to serve on a committee, it really didn't make sense for us to bring, for instance, the librarian in on every instructional material that we adopted. In many cases, especially if they're at the elementary, they don't have that curriculum experience. So this on page 3, what you're seeing is specifically aligned to what NRS requires. So that's why that's pared down a little bit. It doesn't mean we won't invite students. When it comes to secondary curriculum, we often invite students to sit on those adoption committees so that we can get the student perspective, especially on usability of the material, right? Whether or not they feel it's accessible. So then if you move on to the review process at the bottom of that page, that's very specifically taken directly out of NRS. Those are the things that we have to address by state law. So those have been updated. On number 2 on page 4, the middle of the page, this was added about electronic media because there is obviously a big shift to everything moving towards away from our old textbooks in many cases and now using online platforms or electronic media. There's a lot of open ed resources that are out there that we are also able to use as a primary. So the one thing I wanted to point out is the actual language on there. So at number 2, it says, when electing to use electronic media, the district shall notify the Department of Education of its intent to use electronic media as the primary basis of instruction. So all of our primary instructional materials have to actually be adopted and approved at the state level, right? If we use it as a supplemental material, then it does not have to be adopted at the state level. We, however, the way state law is written is that our principals have to approve it, so that teachers technically cannot bring in just something that they want to teach whatever in the classroom. They have to have either principal approval, like I said, if it's supplemental, or it has to be adopted by the district. So first the state adopts, then we adopt based on what the state has approved, and then it's utilized in the classroom. So that includes electronic media. Once we go through that process, and this is only if it's not currently been approved at the State Board of Education level, then we would do that review process and we would submit, and number 3, the result of those evaluations to the Department of Ed. So we can do our own adoption, right? If for instance, we take a look at, in this case, if we were looking at K-5 math materials and we looked at what the state currently had approved, and we saw that there was maybe a new vendor that had not been reviewed at the state level, but we liked that material, we could go through an initial process in our district to review that. We follow all these steps, and if we found that we wanted to utilize it, we would submit our findings to the State Board of Education, and then we would have to wait for them to approve it. So we can do initial adoptions, but most cases we don't, because the state has an adoption cycle now that they go through, and we typically look at and only review the materials that have been approved at the state level. Because why go down a different pathway when they are employing educators all across the state to do it to begin with, right? That is part of the governor's ACing accountability report, if you will, as an aside, that we did have to submit a report to the state saying what every one of our primary resources were and indicate whether or not it was approved at the state level. So, and we are in compliance with that. If you look at number 4 on the bottom of page 4, I think this is an important one to point out because sometimes this occurs. So if a textbook or electronic media is adopted by the State Board of Education and has not been evaluated by a committee appointed pursuant to these regulations, the superintendent shall afford the parents and students, or excuse me, parents of students enrolled in the district and other members of the community an opportunity to review the textbook or electronic media and submit comments to the district. So technically speaking, we are only required under state law to do the whole committee piece and this alignment piece if it's not already adopted and approved at the state level. If it is on the state list, then we can simply as a district say, this is what we want to use. We can open it up to parents and community members to give us feedback. I want you to know, even though that's the bare minimum that's required in our district, we do both. We do an internal committee to review all of the materials that are available on the state's list, and we give our parents and community members the opportunity to give us feedback before we bring it to you to inform you of what we've selected. But this is consistent with state law. And then if you look on page 5, it goes on to further say when it says selection of finalists, again, that's an initial adoption. If it's not already on the state's level, that's what that refers to. And in the middle of that page, there is a piece here that if we wanted to use textbook or electronic media on an experimental basis, then we could do that for 1 year. We have to notify NDE that we're doing that, and we could test drive it, if you will. It's very rare that we would do that because you still have to purchase those materials. So I don't know that we would make an investment in paying for something that we were going to use experimentally for 1 year and then hopefully have NDE prove it. So we've not exercised that option, although technically we could. So it's in there. And then there's the last part is the definition of electronic media. So those are the proposed updates. And again, it's just really more about bringing it and making it consistent with what state law requires, and I wanted to make sure that it was actually more detailed than our current regulation, since we have so many coming up. Just want to make sure we don't have missteps. I want to make sure that we're doing it the right way and covering all of our bases.
And I think it's very timely because the state board has been spending a considerable amount of time talking about this process and how to ensure it's happening at the district and the committee level for the state. And so I believe there will be more scrutiny on that kind of pushed by the members of the State Board of Education.
Yeah.
Any comments or feedback from the board? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate the update. We're going to move on to item 9. Discussion on newly proposed CCSD policy 1006, leave for parents of children enrolled in school. This is a first reading for discussion only, and Mr. Dan Sadler is presenting.
Thank you, President Cassioppo, members of the board. Good evening. So we're going to review some HR policy and regulations for the next 3 hours, so sit tight. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, we started a phase 1 assessment with Pool Pact last school year, and as we've been working through that, we've not only modified numerous policies and regulations to make them up to date with statute and federal law, but there's also some recommendations to create some policy and regulation that does not currently exist. So the first of those before you this evening is leave for parents of children enrolled in school, policy 1006. Also important to just remind everybody that when we talk about the 1,000 sections of the policies, that these are policies and regulations that would encompass all employees, not specific to one employee group. So the overview for this one would be granting employees with school-aged children 4 hours of unpaid leave per school year, per child to engage in school-related activities to support parental involvement in their children's education. And just a couple of key points. It's per NRS that's referenced there, 392 5.4577. This is applicable to employers with 50 or more employees. The leave can be used for parent-teacher conferences, school activities, volunteering, school events. The leave request must be submitted in writing 5 days in advance, and that's really just so that the schools would be able to provide coverage for those employees, because again, it's not specific to teachers. It could be any employee in the district. There's a prohibition against retaliation for employees using that leave. And the recommendation would be that we adopt and implement this policy as suggested here. But any questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer.
So just a thought, and I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but what would the impact be if we allowed 4 hours of paid leave? You know, I mean, we're pushing for families to engage in our schools for all kinds of events, and we certainly want all parents to participate in parent conferences. And so it could be a nice gesture, but I don't know what the fiscal impact would be if, you know, we're talking 4 hours, you know, and rarely somebody's going to take all of that. It's typically like your teacher has a kid at the middle school and they need to run over at 2 o'clock for a conference type deal. So I don't know. I mean, I think I like the policy, but I think that if there's a way to support families and teachers and staff members and allow them that leave with pay, I think that would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think not having something in policy right now to reflect what the statute requires, like this would be a starting point for us. And there's certainly different channels that we could consider that, and that could be something, you know, when we do negotiations, leave is something that is in that conversation, and that could be something that could be negotiated at that time. Certainly it could be this board's decision to support that up front. We just wouldn't want to be not compliant with what is required per NRS. Yeah.
And I would like to see information about it. I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I'm just saying that as an educator, I think that it's something that would be beneficial for our people.
Agreed.
Trustee Walker, I'm happy to work with Mr. Sadler on that. I think the way the policy is written is specifically consistent with the statute, which is important. I think you're wading in a little bit to bargaining issues if we start providing paid leave to only certain employees. So we would need to be very careful about that.
So my comments were on the same, because the statute just says that public school leave from his or her place of employment for 4 hours per school year. It doesn't state that it couldn't be paid. It doesn't state that it couldn't be comp. It doesn't even state that it couldn't be flex. And so my concerns, and I emailed you about this prior to this meeting, my concerns are unpaid, because is that going to affect their PERS? Is it going to affect their insurance if we go down that route? The other thing that I don't know what we're in such a hurry for, because it doesn't say that it has to be effective July 1 of 2024. This section of statute doesn't say that. It doesn't say that, it expires during any time. I would be more comfortable if we waited and it went to the bargaining units and was put into a contract on that end. When anything goes into pay, when it comes to employees, I think it's important to have that in their contracts. I mentioned to you in that email that I know that there needs to be policy, and by giving them, when I taught, it was kind of when you did back to school night, you did a couple hours, you went to your principal and you said, hey, I've got so-and-so to cover my classroom at this point. Is it all right if I go to my kid's parent conference, or is it okay if I go and volunteer for an hour or go to their lunch or whatever the case may be? And it made for a positive environment. We all know that teachers have one of the most restrictive schedules ever. I mean, you can't even go to the bathroom when you want to. You have to get someone to cover your classroom to go relieve yourself. Been there and done that. And so I think by putting this into a policy, again, we're restrictive. We're not creating a friendly, environment on that end. And by saying unpaid, I really don't, I have a problem with that as well. And seeing that the statute doesn't say
It actually does.
So I've got it here and it just
I
says
know, I'm looking at
employment
it
for
too.
4
It's
years.
subsection 3 under E. An employer is not required to pay an employee for any leave taken pursuant to this section.
Yeah, we're not required, but I mean, we could say it be paid, we could say it's comp, and we could say it's flexible. I know Mineral County allows comp, and they do it by hour, rather, to make up for that. That's how Mineral County wrote it into their contract, is for comp time.
I think as we get into the details of it, I would defer to Mr. Russell. You look like you have something to say anyway, so.
No,
Please.
I think we all understand exactly what you're saying. This is written to be specific with the statute. It doesn't prohibit you from, again, in negotiations, providing, some benefit or doing whatever you can to increase. But the policy, if you're going to adopt it, should be specifically consistent with the statute, and that's what this is.
It's also the first reading, so if Dan happens upon more information that might change this, we're not approving, we're just discussing. So, you might come upon more information that we discuss when we get to the second reading.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, back to the assessment through Pool Pact, this is something that obviously our district has not been aware of, and I was not aware of until they brought it to our attention. And this is really through their recommendation that we have a policy that's consistent to support what is in statute.
Do we know if it would affect their PERS or not? By taking unpaid leave for that shorter period of time?
If they took unpaid leave and didn't compensate with some type of leave that they have available, potentially, it could. Mhm.
Could it affect their insurance as well?
No.
No.
Then what I would like to see, if we bring this back for a second reading, is maybe a little bit better policy statement. Usually we start with the Carson City School Board recognizes the need, that type of thing. This just kind of starts with the NRS language. The need to support our employees, the type of thing.
Kind of that typical intro sentence.
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
see.
Like most of our policies are written that way, they have some kind of better introduction, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I think, I appreciate what everybody's saying, and I certainly don't disagree. I don't want to do anything that jams anybody up with PERS or anything. I also don't want to make sure I want to make sure we're careful that we don't do anything that allows something for one segment of our staff and not others. I could see if you did this and said we're going to pay you and you can take these 4 hours, somebody else coming in and going, well, wait, I have a situation and I don't qualify for this. What about me? So I just think some thought and consideration would be helpful. Some additional thought and consideration.
And I mean, it would have to be specifically parents of school-aged children. So, I mean, it's not like any situation would work in here. So, I mean, the law is the law, and it's addressing parents of school-aged children. And so I think that we do have that.
I think it's important to note, too, that it doesn't prevent somebody from using their available leave for this same purpose, right? This is kind of extending an opportunity it could be somebody who doesn't have leave available, but they want to attend an event as well, so.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to item 10. Discussion on newly proposed CCSD policy 1007, leave for nursing mothers. This is a first reading for discussion only. Mr. Sadler.
Okay, thank you. One thing I want to point out quickly, as I was looking at my draft, I believe the incorrect statute is provided there. It should be 608.0193, and citing the Nevada Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So that is one change that I'm going to need to make. 608.0193. I apologize for that.
And just also, I found, because I was looking at, and there's another one at 613.4353 to 613.4383, which is the Nevada Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And I also found it in NRS 281.755. So I was going to give those to Mr. Russell and you afterwards to just make sure if it's in multiple places and we're citing it, if it's appropriate that we include all of them or not.
Appreciate that. So overview on this, again, really to get us in compliance with both state and federal law. On this one specifically, this policy would be providing reasonable breaks for employees to express breast milk for their nursing infants up to 1 year old, and including provisions for a suitable private space for this to occur. Couple key points here. Employees can use paid or unpaid breaks for this purpose. The district will provide a clean private space for doing this. The policy prohibits retaliation again against the employees for exercising those rights. And specific to the statutes that I had corrected and that you had suggested, this is really born out of the Nevada Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
So once this passes, then is every school equipped and ready to provide that space right now?
Well, state law says that we have to be. So I think getting this put in place and bringing it to the awareness of our, because it's not just specific to schools, could be any district workplace. So that would be kind of a next step to say, okay, how do we need to address this? Certainly, there's going to be some sites that are more well-equipped currently with the space that's provided, available to provide for this. It also could be case by case as far as when this comes up on a site, okay, now we need to put an accommodation in place. What does that look like on that campus?
So does it give us the flexibility for a certain amount of days to become compliant? Because is it kind of like putting the cart before the horse, or do we?
I mean, the statute already exists, so we have to by law already
No,
do
I
this.
know. I'm just saying that if it isn't, and if the school doesn't have a space, what does that do for the school then?
In several schools in the district that have had people have needed a space for expressing breast milk. And, typically the teacher and the principal or site administrator will figure out a space and a time. And, I'm thinking back to Fritch, and there was a time somebody used my office. You know what I mean? The door was closed and window blocked off, and that's just what somebody did. You know what I mean? And so I think this is happening in our schools because we have people having children. It's just making it official.
I think the short answer to your question, Trustee Walt, is as long as the school's making reasonable best efforts to accommodate, that's going to be the scrutiny that they'll endure.
Thank you. Just a few questions. So the first line, it says that the district will provide paid or unpaid. Is that up to the district's discretion, or whose discretion is that? Is that like the administrator? Like we will?
It would really
for this,
depend on
or
the
what?
employee. And so as an example, like if you are an ESP and you have a 15-minute break, that is technically your time that you can use, right?
What's ESP? Sorry.
Education support professionals are classified employees. Whereas like teachers have a prep period. So it looks different depending on what type of employee you are. That prep period is technically a paid time for teachers to prepare class materials, whatever they need to do for their teaching. But an employee may decide that that's a good time for them to do this as well. And so I think a lot of the questions that come up are kind of case by case, and depending on who the employee is and what their schedule looks like, what they're comfortable with.
So they would be at their discretion if they want to be paid or unpaid. Is that correct? That
Correct.
employee. Okay. And then my understanding, and this is just talking to women who have pumped because I know nothing about that, but my understanding is that pumping usually is like recommended every 3 hours. So like say they do it before school, 7, and then again at 10, and then, what is that, 1? What if that doesn't fall like with their prep? What do they do? Are they like
I think that's where the leave could come into play.
And so they have to use leave, or is that just something that we can pay them and we provide like a reasonable accommodation?
I think we're always going to try to seek the reasonable accommodation. It doesn't mean that they would then they'd be forced to take unpaid leave. That's certainly not the way we operate. Again, I want to say even my experience as a principal in supporting some of our staff members has been what's going to work best for you, and let's see how we can put that together. Putting this into policy is really just to recognize that this is a right of our employees and that we recognize that within the parameters of what's required per statute.
Okay.
But that doesn't cover, well, what about my situation, right? I think those conversations take place between the supervisor and the employee. I think some of the rights that are put in place here benefit the employee such that the supervisor couldn't say, well, no, we need you to teach. Sorry, you can't do this. Or we need you to drive a bus. You don't get to do this. They have a right to do it.
And so I guess where I'm just going is I just want to make sure like we're not forcing them to not be paid, right? Like if you're going to do this, you're not going to get paid. That's not a thing, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then my other question is just the next word, reasonable. Like who decides what's reasonable? I don't like I'm sorry? A normal person would say, so is that like the principal in that situation? She's the reasonable
I think
person?
we start with the supervisor, and it could be determined, maybe the employee who needs to pump decides that that's not reasonable, and maybe that conversation then needs more input on what is reasonable. I think, and I'm not trying to dodge the question, I really think it's situational depending on what that schedule looks like for the employee and what they're comfortable with. And our hope is that we're going to make it reasonable with something that they're comfortable with. It really isn't something that's come up as an issue, and that's why we're doing this.
Okay.
It's
No, I
something
get
we've
it.
been supporting.
Yeah.
Just listening to your questions, Matt, I think that if anything, this is to the benefit of our employees because what it eliminates is a supervisor some way, we never know who the supervisors are going to be in the next coming years saying, no, we don't do that. You don't have that option. This is a right of the employee and this is something that must be worked out. And then there's a process. If there is an agreement met, they could go to human resources. And I think it's mostly for the benefit of our employees.
Right. And that's where I'm going. And I just want to make sure, because I know like a classroom teacher doesn't have this, I wouldn't say they have the same amount of time as maybe like a non-classroom employee who sits at a desk and collects data and inputs that stuff, where they can probably work it out a little better to use their break and to use the restroom and then to pump, versus a classroom teacher who's got to run to the restroom, do hall duty, and then pump. And so I just want to make sure like we're really consistent. So-
Trustee Clapham, just for what it's worth, most of law school's spent trying to figure out what a reasonable person standard is. It truly is just like the ADA, which requires a reasonable accommodation. It's situational based on the needs of the employee. And so everything you're talking about would be considered in deciding what's reasonable.
Yeah, that's all. I just having conversation with some ladies, and I just want to make sure like
Absolutely. No, they're good questions.
I'm backing my ladies.
Yeah, and that's why I say I'm really not dodging the question. I know sometimes you speak to attorneys or administrators, and the answer is, well, it depends, right? And it really does depend. The intent here is, again, to get this in to protect our employees, and it's an added value for them, and call attention to it. The other thing is this is a policy, and should the need arise for a regulation with more specific steps, that's something we could always put in place as well.
And just a comment, I appreciate this. I appreciate that it's state law. I appreciate this policy. And I really appreciate that it says other than a restroom, because I can't tell you how many times I fed my babies in restrooms because there was no other place. And anyway, I just think that's great.
I think this is important. I'm glad we're, I know we have to, but I'm glad we're doing this. It is important. So we'll move on to item 11. Discussion on newly proposed CCSD policy 1010, pregnancy, childbirth, and related medical conditions. First reading for discussion only. Thought the other ones were complicated. Here we go.
All right. Starting with the policy, again, first, I have to apologize. It says NRS 613, and there is some additional detail, specifically 613.335. And there are some other additional statutes that I will pull back specific to the Federal Pregnancy Discrimination Act. So those are some things that I do need to go back and put in, and I apologize for that error. I did not catch that on my draft. Overview of the policy would outline the district's commitment, and there's that language that we were discussing earlier. The Carson City School District is committed to providing reasonable accommodation for female employees or applicants experiencing pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. Hopefully, this policy will ensure non-discrimination in supporting employees and maintaining their job roles without any undue hardship. So a couple key points on this one. Again, the NRS 613.335 and the Federal Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Also, the Nevada Pregnant Workers Fairness Act really guides why we need to put this policy in place. Obviously, offering reasonable accommodations as required. There's that word reasonable again. Employees and applicants would not face any adverse employment actions due to accommodation requests. And the notice of the rights would be provided to new employees and posted conspicuously on all sites and break rooms.
Questions, comments, board? Okay, seeing none. Move on item 12, discussion on newly proposed CCSD Regulation 1010, pregnancy, childbirth, and related medical conditions. Again, for discussion only. Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, President Casiopo. So the regulation to support this, again, I will make those corrections with the statute and the federal support documents. But this regulation will provide detailed procedures for managers and supervisors to follow to be able to accommodate pregnant employees, reinforcing the non-discrimination stance and outlining specific accommodations and prohibitions. So specifically, managers noting the EEO officer, equal employment opportunities, that's me, but that's the way that it's listed in the statute and the federal law, specifically EEO. That's why it doesn't say the Chief Human Resources Officer. But upon learning of an accommodations need, that's the current process for any accommodations we have in district. Prohibiting taking any adverse actions or denying employment opportunities due to accommodation requests. And then noticing the requirements mandate of informing new employees and posting that again conspicuously. So this is just really the process to follow and making sure that we take care of those issues.
Dan, on that one, on the opening sentence, the third line down, is that NRS language where it says, or related medical conditions, the manager/supervisor should promptly notify the EEO?
Correct.
Okay. I always, whenever I see should, I wonder if it should be shall. I wanted to just make sure we didn't miss something there.
No, it says should, I believe. I believe I took that word for word off of what was there.
Okay.
I can double check though.
Yeah, maybe just check. I just don't want to miss that. Mike?
You know, Dan, I'll just say, you know, we've, over the past several years, talked about kind of updating our policies and regulations and kind of making sure that they were timely. And so I want to thank you for actually going through and making sure that these types of things are in our policies, because I'd much rather have these conversations now and get them approved by the board than somebody comes up and it's like, this provision isn't accounted for and here's the law. So thank you for being on top of that and helping us stay in compliance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, if nothing else, we move on to item 13. Informational update on staffing for the Carson City School District for discussion only. Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, President Casiopo. Members of the board. So first I need to give a shout out to my HR team, specifically Ariel, Kirsten, and Corey. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We've got a team of people supporting our new employees, but they've really done an awesome job. getting them through the hiring process, paperwork, and to those new hire events and supporting them through the process of enrollment and benefits, you name it. They're an awesome team, and a lot of the work behind the scenes, I really have to give them a shout out. So thank you, Ariel, Kirsten, and Corey. The last 2 school years, you can see the dates here, vacancies by year. It says 8/9/22, 8/8/23, and then 8/9/24. I've presented information to you on those earlier dates about what do our vacancies look like. And so this is just an update on that. Organized it a little bit differently this year. I think it's a little easier to read, but just going down the line there, you can see administrative positions. We have not had any vacancies in August for the previous 3 years. Athletics, coaching positions, those kind of come and go throughout the year. We do have 13 coaching positions, so anybody who's watching, if you're interested in coaching athletics district-wide, take a look at our website, carsoncityschools.com. Certified positions, you can see at this time, 2 years ago, we had 19 positions. Last year, we had 9. This year, we have had 8 as of the 9th. Certified special education, 10, 5, and 3. Classified ESP employees, 23, 12, and 13. Classified special education specific positions, we had 15, 12. This year, 4. And then I kind of just bracketed, like these are the positions that were district-wide really focused. These are our full-time positions, right? So it's not to say we're not trying to hire for athletics, and certainly administration, if we had vacancies, would be included there. But these are the positions that we are really critical that we get covered because it's the heart of the district, whether that's a teaching position or a para or a bus driver or a custodian. These are the positions that we got to get filled. So the trend is definitely moving in the right direction. You can see as I've kind of grouped those together, 2 years ago, we had 67 vacancies at this time. Last year, 38. And as of August 9th, we had 28.
Yeah, I just want to say you and your team have done I know you have more to do, but just are doing a fantastic job. I mean, we're just in the last, several years, like you're showing, it's just been, it's really quite impressive what you guys have done. So
I appreciate that. We're moving in the right direction, but I think specific to that comment, it's really a district-wide effort. It really is. And so I'm happy to lead that effort, but word of mouth, and we'll talk about some of the things that are working here. It's really kudos to all of our employees for helping in this process. Positions filled by year, again, I used those same 3 dates. So this is showing how many positions did we fill during the hiring season for the upcoming school year. So as an example there, for school year 22-23, we had 8 administrative positions that we filled. And some of those were filled by transfers, like there's different ways that those positions were filled. Last year we had 4, this year we had 3 positions that we filled. Certified staff, again, 2 years ago, 63, last year 72, this year 45. If you were in the new hire events last year, there were really large crowds, a little bit smaller this year, which has been a huge celebration. Classified ESP staff overall, 30 up to 50 last year, and then back down to 27 this year. And then you can see executive. I also put the critical labor numbers on there because I think that's something that's important. From time to time, we ask your support in supporting critical labor shortage, and then we get permission from PERS to fill those positions. So you can see how many people we've had in those positions this year, and then going back the previous 2 years as well. So the number of positions that we've filled by the school year was 93 in 22, 122 in 23, and 72 this year. So to just kind of put that in perspective, given the number of certified positions we have, when I pulled this data, we had 11 vacancies. And this is using that number of 520. We could probably whittle that up or down depending on what we consider. This is the number that I used for each of the previous 2 years, so I did not go back and hand count exactly how many positions we actually have this year that are certified. I just used that same number, but we do have 11 vacancies. So that's a 2.1% vacancy rate or a 97.9% fill rate. Again, that's an increase each of the previous 2 years, but up even from last year for certified. And then for our classified ESP positions, basing that number on 378 full-time classified positions and 17 vacancies, That equates to a 4.4% vacancy rate, which is down from 7% last year. And then that fill rate looks at 95.6, again, up from 93. And these are numbers that we're very proud of. You hear stories about different districts in Nevada, different districts across the United States, and retaining employees is a significant challenge, and recruiting employees is a significant challenge. And so to be looking at these types of numbers is truly amazing, given the job market and the challenge it's been to find people who are certified to come work in our teaching positions and who are willing to come work in our other positions. So we're very proud of these numbers. There's still room for improvement. I mean, our goal would be to have this 100% every year. That would be great. Historically, I don't know that we've ever had that, but that's our goal. And so we're going to keep working at that goal. Just wanted you to see some of the positions. Again, some of this has already changed, but as of the 9th, different sites and what positions were vacant. If there's a bracket there that says LTS, that's where we have a long-term sub in there. I thought that would be good information to share as well. So we do have 4 long-term subs in positions. You'll see like the NJROTC instructor position at Carson High School. We have 2 vacancies there still. So that was one in particular that's been a real challenge for us to fill. It's an awesome job though. If you're watching, you're interested, give me a call. But this is what our current snapshot looks like district-wide. This changes day to day, depending on who's staying and who we're hiring. But again, these numbers and these positions, this was a couple pages on a slide last year, so this is looking really good. Our goal, again, would be to fill all of these positions, and that's what we'll keep working at. So a couple things that I just wanted to highlight, what's working, I think first and foremost, given what the legislature supported and then what you supported for competitive salaries for our employees. That's been a very huge piece for supporting retention, which is really helping us with recruitment because we have fewer positions that we need to fill. So I want to thank you for your support there. Also, the early retirement notification incentive from last year, that made a big difference. We were able to fill multiple, especially our teaching positions early on. We really beat our neighboring school districts to the postings, and that made a big difference for us being able to fill those positions early. So again, kudos to you for supporting that initiative, and thank you. Local career fairs, we've hosted one about every quarter, and we're averaging right around 30 applications per event. We had another one in July, and I was happy to see a lot of those faces in our new hire events this week. So we're going to continue to do local career fairs. We'll be supporting the Carson City Career Fair at the Community Center coming up in September. And we've had a lot of success with those events. Yeah.
Are you getting classified or certified?
Both.
Are you?
Yeah, especially during the summer. We got a few more certified. We got a lot of substitute teachers. And historically, it's been more classified, but it was this July was really pretty well balanced from our applicants.
And where are they graduating from?
The teachers who have attended the career fairs specifically that were already licensed, so they're coming from other districts. Yep. Social media, branding, and marketing has certainly helped. You've noticed that there's a couple different versions of that logo up there floating around, and Dan Davis has helped us out with social media, new website, a lot of what we've done with marketing over the past year. There's a lot that's working, so it's also difficult to point, well, what did you do that really made the difference? So we'll continue to do these things, but the most important thing, then we do actually have data to track this on our application system, is the word of mouth. So when we ask people, when they apply, how did you hear about us? We give them a couple options, and they could also fill something in. Word of mouth continues to be like above 65% of our employees put that word of mouth is how they found out about this position. So kudos to, again, all of our employees, you as board members, anybody who's getting the message out there that we're hiring and we're looking for people. This is a good time for me to plug that we're really going to be campaigning for substitute teachers, and we've improved those numbers quite a bit this year, but We want to continue to involve our community who's interested in coming to be substitute teachers. So you may have seen some signs that we put up around town, and we're going to continue to work with the sites. We'll be on campus as an HR team here coming up this fall, talking to parents, community members, really just trying to get the word out there that we're looking for substitute teachers and give some community education on what it takes to become a licensed substitute teacher if they're interested.
One of the other things I think that is easy to overlook that contributes to the word of mouth is really the relationships that we maintain in this district, from the school board superintendent all the way down to classified employees. You know, we truly do work together, and our focus is on a supportive district for our employees. And when there are hard times, everybody comes to the table and works together. And that's not always the case. You know, it's rare, and Carson City is a place that everybody kind of steps up looking out for the greater good. And it contributes to the reputation of this district. And as somebody who spends time outside the district looking in as well as in looking out, I know the reputation, and I know that there's a lot of things that you should be proud about in this district. And number one is those relationships that are maintained, because that's what makes the difference.
Absolutely. I appreciate you highlighting that. And we had a lot of conversations about that with our employees over the last year. The employee value proposition's become part of that marketing piece that we talk to prospective employees about. Like, here's what our employees have talked about that they really enjoy about our district. I reviewed that with our ESP new employees today. And you're absolutely right. Like, this is a special place to work and teach and learn. And I think people who've worked in other school districts in particular realize that probably more so than someone who started their career here. Not that they don't know. I mean, it is a great place to work for many reasons. But in particular, I think people who are coming from other districts, I heard that several times from some of our new certified and administrative staff this year, like, wow, this is very different in a good way.
Well,
So,
we heard that tonight.
yeah,
I mean, so it's not just us talking about it, but, you know, Principal Virgil said that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a celebration. Just a couple more things here. Virtual career fairs, basically our partnership with Handshake, we've been able to sustain that previously through ESSER funds, and we found a way to make that happen again this year. But when we do a virtual career fair, basically I create a Zoom and I create invitations and I send a message internally through Handshake to about 10 million prospective candidates for positions. And then I weed through all the messages of people who say, quit sending me messages, and have some personal conversations with people who are interested. And those have been successful as well. We've had 2 virtual career fairs, and we've made certified teacher hires out of both of those career fairs. So we intend on doing more of those. They're essentially free for us to do. It just takes time. And it's a good opportunity for us to also highlight different programs or different schools in our district. So if we had a school like ROTC is one that comes to mind, like we did a virtual career fair with Carson High School last spring, but let's go back at it and let's really highlight ROTC and see if we can't target people to that Zoom conversation to highlight the opportunity that we have supporting that JROTC program. So we'll continue to do those as well. Regional career fairs, we've done different things over the years. I know that we still have a lot of people around the area that were recruited, like out of Montana and Wyoming and some of the western states. We tried some different things last year and really targeted locally. Had good success at the University of Nevada. For the first time, they supported an educator career fair, so we weren't competing against the likes of Tesla. I mean, we are for employees, but when it's just educators and school districts, we were one of the busier booths there. A lot of people had heard about us. A lot of people had connected with us on Handshake previously and had some great conversations that turned into hires. So we were very happy to support that partnership with University of Nevada. We also visited Chico State University, Sacramento State University, Sonoma State University, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and Cal State Monterey Bay. We'll continue to support some of those conversations. Some were more successful than others, but I think it's also part of the branding and marketing. And, you know, the first time you show up at Cal Poly, most people don't know where Carson City is. So we have conversations about where Carson City is and all the great things we have to offer. And as we establish that brand on campus, people will gravitate to having conversations with us. We saw that already with Chico State. We've been going there the last 3 years. And there's people who said, oh, I talked to you last year, and they came back up. I didn't actually attend that one. That was Ariel. But same thing with the Sacramento State University, obviously a little bit closer to home. Lot of people stopping by. Hey, I've heard good things about Carson City, or you guys are right by Lake Tahoe, and just great conversation starters. So we'll continue to work our regional career fairs for prospective teaching candidates in particular. The last year, we've supported over 14 candidates for iTeach partnership through getting their alternative route licensure. A lot of those have worked into really good partnerships with our employees, and they're in classrooms again this year, working towards that teaching degree. So the iTeach partnership ARL would be people who already have a bachelor's degree, but they want to become teachers. It's kind of the quick route to licensure. And then over the last year, we've formed a partnership with UNLV for the Paraprofessional Preparedness Program, the PPP, and also the AARL. So a lot of abbreviations and acronyms going on here, but really the partnership with UNLV supports people who don't have a bachelor's degree, but they're interested in becoming teachers. Once they're accepted into the program at UNLV in partnership with our support as a school district, they essentially take the credits needed to complete a bachelor's degree in education free of charge. Currently, it's funded through grants at the state level with that partnership at UNLV. And then the AARL expands those opportunities beyond just people who don't have a bachelor's degree to get advanced degrees. All right, so there's a lot of information there. And again, none of this is boastful. We're very proud of this in a good way, in a very team-centric way as a district. We're doing good things. There's areas we need to improve. We're aware of those, and I'm certainly open to suggestions as they come up. But I want to see if we have any specific questions or things you'd like me to cover.
I don't have any specifics on what we want you to cover. I like the fact that you're spreading out and diversifying and, hitting schools in reasonable proximity that aren't necessarily in our area. I know years ago we went to Chico State on a, on a career fair type thing. And, back then really nobody, I think it was the first time we'd reached out to a school like that far. And since then I've had people, because we went to school there, have contacted me or my wife periodically and, hey, what do you guys think about Carson City? And I kind of laugh, and so I've been here for 30 years. What do you think? But, so it's just kind of, we do it at work too, unrelated to the school. It's word of mouth and just being there, and eventually people get used to you, and all of a sudden the Carson City School District becomes part of their vocabulary, and that's important to just, make sure when they think about these kinds of things, they think about us.
Absolutely.
So I think you're doing a great job with that as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That reminds me, just one thing to highlight. Like with the regional career fairs, these are typically where everybody has a table and a booth and there's educating, we're all looking for the same candidates. Connection I made at Cal State Monterey Bay, I said, well, instead of, because the date didn't work out, so we couldn't do the career fair. So I said, well, how about we just show up and set up a table and talk to anybody who wants to talk to us? And they said, that's great. And actually, they invited us to come visit this year, and we'll get to go in the classrooms and present to the teaching candidates. Like, there's no competition the day we're there. And I'm sure they're doing it for their districts as well, but it's really our opportunity to shine and get in front of those teacher candidates and answer any questions they have. So I think that's going to be shifting a little bit, kind of like the virtual career fairs. If we can figure out ways where we're not necessarily competing with their local districts at the moment, that's something we're very interested in.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, Dan, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, to your point, it kind of takes a village, and I think everybody chipping in is helpful. So thanks to everybody involved. Going to move on to item 14, approval of the consent agenda. This is for possible action. Motion and a second. Any board discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 15, informational items. This one's for discussion only, no action. Board, any questions on the informational items? Seeing none, we'll go to item 16, request for future agenda topics. Do we have any? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.